So as we suit up to watch Canada take on the USA tomorrow, and Team Finland take on Team Slovakia this afternoon, what I wanted to do was go out there and talk about one of the players on the losing Team Sweden squad. Yeah, that's kind of harsh. I apologize. But in this video, I wanted to talk about EP40, Vancouver Canucks' Elias Pettersson once more, and just dive into some of the narratives that have surrounded him and his trade situation over the past few days. The two teams that are linked the most, it seems, in trade rumors and discussion, and whether or not one team makes more sense over the other. So let's refresh y'all's memories a little bit. The last time we had spoken about Elias Pettersson, it was in this video over here from 2 days ago, talking about the EP40 problem with Team Sweden. Essentially, the team didn't really use him all too much, and there were questions as to whether or not that actually was appropriate. Was Pettersson playing better than a guy getting 8 or 9 minutes per game would deserve? Was there a lot more that Team Sweden could have gotten out of Petey had they just used him in more situations? I guess we'll never know because Team Sweden is out, but that was a pretty big narrative about Petey in the Olympic tournament. He finished things off with 2 goals in 5 games played, 0 assists. He was one of the top goal scorers on Team Sweden, although it should be mentioned that the 2 goals that he had scored were both in the same game against Slovakia. Pretty good goals, but still, 1 game nonetheless. Petey had 4 games without a point at the Olympic break, and even though you can say that's not ideal, he still went out there and showed off some very solid two-way play. You can tell that when he's playing with guys that are not AHL caliber, when he's playing with better players than Sam Lafferty and Ilya Mikheyev, Elias Pettersson provides an element of stability, skill, and control that we just haven't seen in Vancouver in a while. Not to say that he played like the 100-point pace caliber Pettersson that existed years ago in Milano Cortina, but he was a little bit better throughout the course of the tournament's games rather than what we had seen over the past few years in Van. But with that said, Elias Pettersson is on a rebuilding team. He's 27 years old, he's making $11.6 million till the end of 2032, and he's a guy that I think most NHL teams would see as a reasonable second-line center on a good team. Which is why we head over to some articles talking about Elias Pettersson and the Detroit Red Wings, as well as the LA Kings. We're going to leave links in the description of these articles. First, we're heading over onto RedWingsInsider.com. Axel Williams published this piece talking about how a $93 million forward is linked to Detroit. Obviously, they are referring to Elias Pettersson. And then we'll also dive into the LA Kings and how they're ramping up their push for the Canucks star. This article was published by Dave Littman. Both pieces in the description if you're wanting to read those yourself. But let's go out there and take a look at the Red Wings, shall we? The Red Wings need a superstar center. Head coach Derek Lalonde could use an elite talent like Elias Pettersson to shake up the Atlantic. Speculation is swirling this Friday that Stevie Y is eyeing the $93 million man from Vancouver. The Canucks have locked him into an 8-year deal, but front offices are always exploring their options. Pettersson is a certified star. Over his NHL career, he generates the kind of elite offensive output that Detroit desperately needs to take the next step. We just watched the Winter Olympics in Italy. Pettersson and Red Wings winger Lucas Raymond displayed instant, undeniable chemistry on the international stage. Raymond was feeding him the puck all tournament. Crisp passing between those two Swedes turned heads across the hockey world and sparked these exact trade whispers. Now, I honestly don't know if that's fully accurate. Pettersson was getting things going with Forsberg and Raquel. I'm not too sure about Raymond, but anyways, all semantics aside, I do think that a Raymond and Pettersson duo would be an absolute nightmare for opposing defensemen. They thrive on controlled zone entries and flat-out speed through the neutral zone. Detroit does not have that second-line weapon down the middle. Larkin carries the mail with his $8.7 million contract, but adding Pettersson creates a terrifying 1-2 punch. Now, I don't really subscribe to the idea of acquiring Elias Pettersson if you are Detroit and putting him on the first line with Dylan Larkin and Raymond. Having two centers there doesn't really seem all too productive. You would need to spread the wealth around a little bit. That's not to say that I would be keen on splitting up Larkin and Raymond, but I would also say this at the same time. If you moved DeBrincat and Kane with Larkin, had an all-American, American line, and then you had Raymond and Pettersson with, I don't know, whomever else on line 2, I do think that actually looks like a pretty nice set of top 2 forward lines to be. Is it the absolute best in the world that the Red Wings could make? I'm not sure, but you can let me know your thoughts in the comments whether or not that makes sense. We know Stevie Y loves his cost-controlled guys, and Elias Pettersson is exactly that. The contract goes on until 2032. There is no worrying about this guy leaving anytime soon. With that said, let's go over to the LA Kings and read what Dave Littman writes about in regards to LA over here. The men's hockey event at the Olympics has been thrilling, with Canada and USA both surviving quarterfinal scares on Wednesday and advancing in overtime. But at least 2 teams in the NHL have not been enjoying the proceedings as much. The Penguins were not thrilled to see Crosby's injury on Wednesday, and for the Kings, the games have not only robbed them of a key offensive player, but has also given them even more impetus to land a big name on the trade market that they've been pushing for, in Elias Pettersson. The Canucks' expensive center performance at the Olympics for Sweden has actually ramped up the Kings' push, according to Ben Kuzma of the province. The Kings' interest in Panarin has increased with the Swedes' 2-goal game Saturday for Sweden at the Olympics, plus the Kings have $15 million in cap space. Additionally, Kuzma notes that current Kings winger Andrei Kuzmenko could be resuscitated by reuniting with EP40. Kuzi scored 39 goals in his rookie year, mostly paired with Elias Pettersson, who also had a career year with 102 points. Kuzma also notes that Pettersson's wife used to live in LA for more than a decade. However, throwing a little cold water on the possibility if the Canucks are looking for a center in any return for Petey, the Kings probably do not have the assets to make that happen. LA currently sits 3 points back of the second wildcard in the Western Conference, while the Canucks are last in the NHL and in the midst of a rebuild. So, with these 2 articles being tossed out there into the forefront, I wanted to just kind of analyze LA and Detroit. Both of these teams probably would give Pettersson a little bit more breathing room versus what he has been greeted with in Vancouver so far. That's not really anybody's fault, I feel. It's just Pettersson was a superstar in Vancouver, was so amazing, so good, so young, and then once he had signed that contract, that's when he became a lot worse. And the timeline as to how that matches up, especially with JT Miller being thrown into the mix and Quinn Hughes wanting out, it just creates this storm in Vancouver that is very difficult to fully live through if you are a player that is in the eye of that storm. LA and Detroit don't have these same issues. They're much better teams with much better paths in the short and, I was going to say long-term future. I don't know if I'd fully say that, but at least in the short term, they're both doing a lot better. So Elias Pettersson tossed himself into a positive situation where a lot of the other guys are actually pulling their weight and they're not AHL caliber like some of these Vancouver dudes are. I could honestly see Elias Pettersson having a nice bounce back and being able to revive his career, whether it is with a Raymond or a Kuzmenko or whomever. Both of these teams would probably have to outbid the other to get a Pettersson trade done. I don't know really how far a team would be able to go, considering Petey's lack of consistency the past few years. But overall, he has been consistent at being a decent to actually good two-way player, just very inconsistent when it comes to point production. And I guess if you're looking for a second-line center, you would like both of those things, defensive responsibility and points. But at the very least, if you are getting solid defensive play with a sliver of offense once in a while, who knows if that's enough for a team to go out there and actually take their chances on him. So with that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Elias Pettersson trade rumors to LA and Detroit. Does this make sense? Which team makes more sense in your mind? And what do you think is the trade price for EP40? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.